So we are live, Ivan.
Hey,
Start from your life.
hello,
Yes.
everybody.
There you go.
Yes. Good morning, everybody.
Morning.
So exciting to have Ivan Z with us. You are also my lawyer, very friendly, knowledgeable, and great legal services. Thank you so much for taking the time, Ivan.
No, my pleasure. This is such an opportune time too, given the time that we have. So I'm glad that you
Yes.
reached out and thinking that this is a really important thing for all your clients and future people that to know what they need to know about this band. So that's good timing.
Yes. And if you do want to buy before the year is over, there's not that much time left, right? Because there's 2 weeks of holidays in December. Really, to buy something is just right now, this month, right? And try to rush complete before December, 20th.
Yeah,
So
a lot of law firms and notaries, they have their holidays. It's tough, and then they charge premiums sometimes during the holiday season if you want them to process the purchase while they're on holidays. So it's tough. So get it done even before, like Melissa says, December 20th, which is a good time to get everything done by that time. So
yes, wonderful. So should I share the slides, Ivan?
yeah, slides would be awesome. That'd be great. We can have the introduce the topic ourselves, and then we move on to the things I want to talk to you about the legislation.
So these are the slides.
Yes, excellent. So the topic, the foreign buyer ban, the legislation which is on the way. A little bit about ourselves. Maybe introduce yourself, Melissa, first. Maybe a little bit more to anyone tuning in who's not following you already.
So I've been a realtor since December of 2003. So this year is my 19th year, and top 1% for 9 years and top 10% for 17 years. Focus mostly on Vancouver, represent mostly sellers for the last 17 years. It's been a great privilege to be able to serve clients in Vancouver.
Thank you. You can go to the next slide that has a little bit about myself. So I've been a real estate practitioner in law for about 25 years now, both residential and commercial, but also I have a lot of clients who are also foreign buyers. Clients of mine in Hong Kong and from China, even from Britain and Germany, US, everybody who's thinking about the Canadian market, I help organize and deal with their purchases as well. So this is really important for all of you guys.
Wonderful. And so foreign buyer ban, who does that apply to?
Yeah, so the first thing is the legislation as it exists now. Now, the thing to know is that there's legislation, but regulations which are developed by the government to enforce and give interpretation to the law itself has not been done yet. So the regulations will come, and we should probably have another Zoom when the regulations do come out, Melissa.
Yes.
They define what certain words mean in certain areas, and I'll show you what words and what areas and things that have not yet been defined by the law yet. They have a general guideline, which is the law, then a regulation show you exactly how it's going to be implemented. So the first thing is, who does it apply to? Foreign buyers of non-commercial property. The first thing you think is residential property that's going to be targeted, not commercial. Second, who does it apply to? Anyone who is a corporation that's controlled by a foreigner. And we can talk about more how that is defined later on as well. And any buyer who doesn't have Canadian citizenship, doesn't have permanent residence. But what's important compared to the other legislation that's been aimed at foreigners is this last part here. So foreigners that have a temporary residence visa, so they're in Canada temporarily as a visitor, are they a student, are they a worker? Sorry, a little typo there, sorry about that. But anyways, worker. So people who are work permits, visitors and also students. So temporary, permanent, like temporary residence visas are right now. So the regulations may define this a little bit further with more qualifications, but that is right now who it applies to. People without those things, and now those corporations are foreign controlled and foreign buyers of non-commercial property. So that's the first.
So if say, for example, if you have a working visa or residence visa, so you're able to just be exempt, you can still buy?
So right now they have some kind of a status. So that status is temporary residence visa. So whether they're going to make any further definitions on how to define it further, but you're in Canada, you have physical permission to be in Canada. It's not like you haven't got something yet. One of the things that the other topic that we talked about in the previous session dealing with the foreign buyers tax. Now, those things deal with people who are exempt if they have something called a PNP nomination. They've applied to immigrate under a BC program called the PNP, and then given confirmation. That's given people who are foreigners who don't have a PR, who don't have a visitor visa, don't have a worker visa, don't have a student visa, and they give them exemptions for the tax. Now, this is whether there's going to be further delineations of how more specific that has to be. But right now, as it stands, before the regulations come, well, this is, you have a temporary residence visa, you're still allowed to buy. You still have to pay the tax, but you're allowed to buy. So it's not a ban, but unfortunately, you can get in to buy, but you still have to pay the tax, which you can look at our previous. Maybe Melissa, you can provide a link later on for anyone here to see our previous episodes. Okay.
So they still have to pay the foreign purchase tax of 20%?
That's right, unless they are here and they got a PNP program and they got a nomination. So they got in that way. They didn't come here yet. They're not PR yet, but they have a nomination, so they can be exempt. They're not banned, but they still have to pay unless they have the nomination, which then they're exempt.
Okay, got it. And who is exempt?
Yeah, so besides the previous one where it says who it does not apply to, so we have those that are PRs and a couple more categories. One, a person who's been found to be a protected person, such as a refugee claimant. The process of refugees is that they may get a hearing and a determination that they are a protected person, but it still takes time to process it and get the actual PR, permanent residence. So in between the time of being found to be and determined to be by the government until they get their PR, they are still exempt as well. So that's one. And then a foreigner who's defined as in the act as a foreigner, so they don't have a temporary residence visa, they're not this or not that, but they are married to someone who is a Canadian who has a status here, citizen and permanent, and they're buying together. So if a husband and wife, one spouse is non-resident, non-Canadian, etc., and they're buying a house together, as long as the spouse that's Canadian buys, they're exempt. So they're half share or the one share, whatever, that becomes exempt. If there's any further definitions about what it means to be the spouses, if they're a Canadian citizen here, but they're not a resident tax, maybe the regulations will come to deal with that more. But so far as it stands now, you're married. You're not separated, you're not divorced, and you have a spouse who's jointly buying with someone overseas. They're not, the ban is not applied to them.
Okay, very good. And next, foreign buyer ban. What kinds of property does it apply to?
Yeah, so they're not only do you have the people who it applies to, but the kinds of property. So the first thing at the outset we mentioned that, it only applies to residential property. But what is residential property? What can be defined as such? So they do have further definitions like detached homes, so buildings with more than 3 dwelling units, parts of buildings such as townhomes and other similar units. Now they quote unquote other similar units. They haven't quite defined what that is. So I'm sure the regulations will come. But one important thing is that it's already defined in other legislation is dwelling unit, the definition. So defined as a unit having a private kitchen, facilities, private bath, and private living area. So if you have a house, for example, I'm sure you have many of these homes as well with coach houses, right? Detached,
yes.
separate entrance, private living area, that is considered a separate dwelling unit. So, they have a house where they rent out one or the other. Well, you buy a house that has more than one dwelling unit, that's considered a dwelling unit, and it applies to that kind of property, okay? So they don't even consider whether it's rented out or not. It's the physical structure. Is it self-contained? Is it a dwelling unit? And therefore, it applies, whether or not you rented it out or not. So that's important.
And what kinds of property are exempt?
Yeah,
commercial.
So, all your buyers out there, Melissa, if you're selling any commercial properties there, yeah, so it's not applicable to commercial property. So business and land for leases that has commercial leases, zone for commercial, industrial, factory, office, etc. Those are not, they're not zoned residential, for example. They're commercially zoned, properties. And then you have vacant land, which are zoned as, I want to put this in, if vacant land, but it's not zoned as residential. Sorry, follow this line here. It's exempt. It applies to properties that are vacant land but are zoned for residential. If it's zoned for commercial and is vacant, then it's also exempt. But here, so I'm going to make that distinction here. Okay, so it is applicable to vacant land which is so zoned as residential, but it is not applicable if it's zoned as commercial and it's vacant as well. And mixed use areas, sometimes you have mixed commercial / residential / commercial industrial factory type thing. So mixed use areas is meant to be like, if there's any portion of it which is residential, then it applies. If it's not residential at all, then it doesn't apply. There's nothing residential about the zoning, even if it's vacant, then it, then it doesn't apply, as long as there's no residential part at all. Any part of it, residential zone, anything, then it applies. Now, the other thing is an area, properties that are located in certain areas. You know how we talked about the foreign buyer tax and how it applies to certain regions in BC, but some like remote areas is not exempt. So same thing here, they don't define the areas yet. I'm assuming at some point they will. They haven't defined what areas in BC that it doesn't apply to, but they've had areas outside a census metropolitan area, which is right in the legislation, or outside a census agglomeration area. Now people will start scratching their head. What does agglomeration mean? So I just want to, next slide will show you what the word agglomeration. So area, not defined, but refers in general to an extended contiguous buildup of an area of a city or town. So you have Calgary, for example, and as they build the city, it goes, expands, and certain towns outside then become part of Calgary. And then you have certain areas which it grows, expands. Kelowna is one such thing. It grows and grows and grows until it hits Vernon. Vernon grows until it hits Kelowna. You have certain areas like Nanaimo grows and grows and maybe hits certain areas on Vancouver Island. So the question is, how do we define it? Though for me, next slide is take some ways in which the foreign buyer tax is applied and defined, and look at that now as a potential area going forward that the tax will apply to, and so that anywhere outside, then it doesn't apply. So in the foreign buyers tax, we have in another different session that we did with Melissa with the foreign buyer tax, these areas, Capital Regional District, which is Victoria, and the Victoria areas around Victoria, and then Fraser Valley, which covers everything to Mission to Abbotsford for those are listeners who are familiar with BC and Vancouver area, you go out into the Fraser Valley. So starts from Vancouver and moves out to Fraser Valley. Metro Vancouver covers a lot of areas of the, Coquitlam and North Vancouver and certain Richmond. And so you have that. And then you have Regional District of Central Okanagan. So that covers Vernon and Kelowna. Those are familiar with BC. So those areas are captured in this because it's a growing area, but it's like, is a contiguous buildup. So it just keeps on expanding to the geographical areas in which it allows the city to grow. And Nanaimo, same thing, growing area, Vancouver Island, but it's heading out north and south, covering other areas in which soon will be, so that the definition will increase and grow as the populations and the growth of the city goes.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Foreign buyer ban enforcement scheme.
Yeah, so the question that sometimes say, hey, what if I do it, and what happens if I do? So this is a big question, right? So, what if I, somehow get in, I find someone to help me buy or something? Those are the questions that come on, which is precisely what the government is trying to prevent. So what happens while forced judicial sale for a price no more than what was paid? So if they somehow discover that a land was purchased by a foreign buyer that somehow avoided all the exemptions because of some other formula or scheme or agreement, they can have a forced judicial sale for a price no more than what was paid. So you can't make a profit out of anything. You get back whatever you paid for it, and you're not allowed, a minimum, you can sell it to someone else who's not a foreigner at a price which is no more than what was actually paid. So that's one of the things, how they define it and how they enforce it, that'll be up to the regulations, but that is what we know right now. And then another thing, this is important because this is similar to how the foreign buyer tax is applied as well. They have this thing here. I apologize a bit for the typos. Fines of up to $10,000 against anyone who knowingly assists a foreigner as defined in the legislation to purchase a non-exempt property. So here's the question is knowingly assist. Knowingly may include people who should have known and should have good grounds to know or suspect some based on information they know, but they turn a blind eye. So this applies to anyone like lawyers and notaries that are in Canada, of course, that sort of should have known but didn't know, or didn't take further investigation, or could have known but didn't. So I'm sure that just like the obligation imposed on notaries, they have to ask questions. They need to get a declaration, something signed and confirmed, and some investigations as to the buyer to find out if they fit in the definition. So it's impose an obligation, further obligation, so that not anyone in Canada, and this is a Canada-wide legislation, can knowingly or turn a blind eye, or the word sometimes uses willful blindness. They haven't defined that. What does knowingly mean? But the way the definitions in other legislation, they could probably have legislation that say that you didn't investigate. The lawyer or notary who assisted the foreign buyer didn't investigate, didn't get something signed or written confirming that the buyer was not applicable. So the regulations are there, but it's not just as simple as are you? And then they say, oh, nope, not like that. Not that simple. So
Interesting. Conditions for purchasing.
Yeah. So anyway, so the time is a temporary ban. So right now it's just a 2-year time frame. On January 31st, it starts coming up soon. As we say, don't wait till January 20, December 20th. You may want to buy it. There's nobody here to help you. There's no realtor to do the contract. There's no lawyer notary to do the sale or purchase. And don't even though it starts effective January 31st, don't wait till then. Do it now. Like now is the time. And Melissa is a good contact, and there's lots of properties around, and here we go. So contract of purchase and sale has to be signed before January 1st. Now the way to define it in the legislation is that there's liabilities that accrue. It doesn't really doesn't say the word no conditions. They don't use the realtor language to define Canadian line legislation. But the way that I would anticipate it happening is that there's obligations that are accrued, and there's consequences for not following up. And the way that I read that is that it most likely will apply and is non-subject properties with the contract that has nothing limited to some condition that's operating in the future after the ban. We'll have to wait for the regulations to really confirm that applicability. So the idea of pre-sales, quite often they don't have any subjects. They can complete in 3 years, and maybe even during the time of the 2-year ban. But as far as I know, you buy a pre-sale without any conditions, you're likely going to be exempt from the ban, but you have to wait. As soon as the regulations come up, Melissa, we should do another one so that the audience and people out there listening and figuring and planning will know. But don't wait till then anyway. You want to buy something,
that's right.
buy it without any conditions. If it completes next year, make sure that it should be safe and don't have any subjects on it. Of course, there's other legal duties that we should do. Have the subject removals well before next year. That's the key. Subject and do your due diligence if you need to. I would never, as a lawyer, advise no subject-free kind of contracts. You always want to see what you're buying and see what it is before you do. But if you do remove it before, well before December 20th or so, get it all done so that we can actually process the actual purchase. Okay. Now the other thing is assignments. Well, likely will include assignments because the person assuming the obligations is obligated to buy. There's no more subjects to the assignment. So unless the assignment is also conditional, be wary about that. Some assignments are conditional for financing. If it's a pre-sale, it's subject to the developer approving the assignment. So we got to watch out for that. So if the assignment is the request is done early and the developer removes their conditions for approving and consents to the assignment of the pre-sale, then you're probably better off. But you got there in time, but don't have it so that the developer still has to give their consent after January 1st. So if you want to do an assignment, do it now. Of course, developers needs time to check who the buyer is as well. And some developers also have restrictions against foreign assignees. So better watch out. You know, you don't want a well beforehand foreign buyer buying an assignment. You better watch out. And then
Yeah, so the key is be in an unconditional contract, right? Before like ideally before December 20th. So it's a good time to start acting now.
Yeah.
Right, because you can still have subjects for a couple of weeks and then remove all of them, you know, before December 20th to be on the safe side.
Yeah, like 3 weeks in November to do subjects, remove subject at the end of November. Then we've got like 3 weeks in December to process the paperwork, including any of those you are non-Canadian. You have to find someone to sign the documents if you don't have your identity already acknowledged and confirmed by a BC lawyer, if it's in BC. I don't know about other law societies and other notary societies in other parts of Canada, but if you're going to buy in BC, you're going to have to get your identification verified by a notary or a lawyer who's BC registered so that they can identify you. Because people who just say, hey, I want to buy, but we, as a law society, lawyers have to identify the client, make sure that they're an actual person with actual genuine IDs. So, you know, I have arrangements with lawyers in Shanghai and Guangzhou and Beijing and Hong Kong and Taiwan, and so that we can verify these in order to do the purchase and follow the law society guidelines here in BC. So there's time, and you need to do all of that too if you do not already have a lawyer notary that has identified and certified your documents and your identity. So.
Perfect. Sounds good. And next is.
Yeah, so that's
it.
The legislation is short. It's not like reams and reams on pages. So I've defined and narrowed down the basics so that if you need more information, contact myself or Melissa.
Yes.
So get further information.
Yes. So I would encourage any buyer to act now, right? Especially if you don't have Canadian status, you still can, you know, be exempt. Otherwise, there's a complete, you know, very strict ban starting January 1st, right?
Yeah. Of course, this ties in with immigration law and certain definitions. So, you know, both me and Melissa, we both have you know, clients and clients and also referral sources who are immigration practitioners or knows about it. So contact either one of us. If you don't know if your status will be applicable or not, it's important to reach out to a professional, Melissa or myself, so we can, if we have to refer you to an immigration professional to take care of your immigration issues or your status, we can do that for you as well.
Yes, wonderful. So any questions after you watch the video, they can comment, or if you want to know more information, comment, write to us, email to us, and we will get back to you.
I have my website over here. You can and my WeChat ID is on the page in front of you there, the screen share there.
Yes, wonderful. Thank you, Ivan, and thank you for everyone that's been watching. And yeah, good luck and the best to all the sales, right?
Right. Okay. You take care. Remember, maybe it's a nice Christmas present for some, you know, but do it beforehand. Right. Don't wait till Black Friday or something. Do it now.
Thank you, Ivan.
Okay. You take care. Thank you. Thanks for having me.